This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, July the 15th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. We are looking forward to speak with you this morning on a topic of your choosing. So if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So here we are with a little bit of a lull in the Major League Baseball season. The All-Star break is upon us. Last night, the Home Run Derby. For the first time in history, a catcher won the Home Run Derby. And, of course, Cal Raleigh, Seattle Mariners catcher, Platinum Glove winner. His career high in home runs leading into this year, I think, was 34. He's got 38 at the break. So there you go. And for the Jays, kind of staggered into the All-Star break. Now, pretty solid first half, as they call it, even though the Jays have played 96 of 162 games. 2-game lead on the New York Yankees, but you're not going to get these role players chipping in the way they have for the first 96 games. Imagine Guerrero, signs a contract for $500 million, and there's players in the league that have 3 times more home runs. That's going to be unsustainable into the future. And congratulations to the Mount Pearl Blazers. They defeated the St. John's Caps 11-4 over the weekend to win the Junior Baseball Championships in this neck of the woods. Congratulations to them. And while we're waiting for the swimming portion of the World Aquatics Championships to kick in over in Singapore, and, of course, I'll be keeping my eye on my fave, Summer McIntosh. I want to give a shout-out to the St. John's Legends. They, of course, have been without a long course pool. The Aquarium has been closed for a long, long time. They competed in the Eastern Canadian Swimming Championships this past weekend in St. John, New Brunswick. They beat out 32 teams from Atlantic Canada. The first time that this province has won said competition. So congratulations to the St. John's Legends. That's pretty good given the fact they haven't had a long course pool to train in for all that amount of time. So was it like 2 years just about? Anyway, let's keep rolling here. So, see another few wildfires burning. Some are out of control out in Chance Harbour. I'm not sure exactly how many properties have been lost due to the fire. Then we're still awaiting, and I'm sure the folks from Adams Cove are certainly waiting more anxiously than I am, about information about access to the Federal Disaster Relief Fund and or provincial government coming to their aid in some form or fashion with all the properties that were lost there. But the province-wide fire ban is back in. Wicked hot yesterday. It's going to be hot again today. The ground is bone dry. So let's make sure that if there are any fires, it's not because of any reckless behavior on behalf of us individuals, human beings. All right, let's keep going. So summer is a tough time of year when you're trying to find a place for your child who's no longer in school. So whether it be with some of the camps that fill up very quickly, they're not cheap, and then it's simply childcare. So this past Friday, the province did release more childcare spaces, but only on the Avalon Peninsula, and said they aren't ready to release any more outside of the Avalon. People refer to it being not a good look, and they're not wrong. All the arguments made about if you're going to have children, you have to be able to take care of them yourself. It's easy enough to say, but in a complicated world where long gone are the days, unless one of the parents is a major league earner, childcare is important. So imagine having to make decisions like this. Whether or not you have to quit your job, whether or not you have to have staggered hours, whether or not you can't go back to school to further your education to better yourself and increase your opportunities in this world because you can't find a spot for your child. So, yes, it all sounded great when it was $10 a day. That's the affordability target. The accessibility target, we're just not there. So any families struggling trying to find early childhood education or childcare spaces, absolutely welcome to join us here on the program this morning. All right, and in a similar field, so we've been talking about the shortage of speech-language pathologists in the province. And there's a story out there in the media if you care to look for it. And this lady, Tanya Ruby, credits her 27-year-old speech-language pathologist for the progress he's made. He suffered a traumatic brain injury, had a fall at a Labrador mine when he was 25 years of age. He was told he didn't stand a chance. They were going to put him in palliative care. He'll never breathe again on his own. He'll never be able to eat, and up and down the line. And here we are all these years later, and Tanya's given credit to the speech-language pathologist. We know that in the world of $20 million and 400 additional positions in the K-12 system, until there was some public pressure brought to bear, speech-language pathologists were not included. Now they've added 5 to a system that hasn't changed numbers in 30 years, despite the referral rate going up 2-3 times. There's a couple of lines in the news story that really speak volumes. They talk about the fact that some of the lack of progress made by the provincial government in adding speech-language pathologists to the public system, whether it be in the school systems or otherwise, is because the scope of practice is basically misunderstood. So this person who's been working in the system for some 16 years. The issue with the young fellow recovering from a traumatic brain injury is he was told he couldn't swallow ever again. And so now he can. And that was through the aid and the therapy offered by speech-language pathologists. So when you say that profession out loud, I'm not sure what everyone thinks, but you probably think about someone who's getting help with a stutter possibly or what have you. But it's the ability to communicate and to understand simple directions, to learn or relearn how to swallow. Things that maybe people don't associate with that discipline, but it really does say a lot when someone working in the system says the shortage here is probably caused by the fact that the government itself maybe doesn't understand the scope of practice and just the wide variety of things that can be done by speech-language pathologists. But now that we're learning, hopefully the government is following suit and learning with us. All right, I'm anxiously awaiting this, and I don't know how many others are, but the Education Accord and the co-chairs, Dr. Goodnow and Dr. Burke, the government expects to have their final draft in hand in the near future. We're past the deadline, but hey, so what? We've just got to make sure. Look, the health accord and that 10-year roadmap, obviously important. But as important is this education accord. Now, there's already serious demands on the province's teacher and teaching assistants and administrators and all the staff and people working in the K-12 system. They're even in the initial draft, and we had both of the co-chairs on at one point, and hopefully as soon as this is publicly released, we'll have them back on to walk us through what they consider to be the appropriate next steps inside the education system. They're talking about more tailoring to the individual's educational needs. You know, whether it be to help pick up those who have additional challenges and or to challenge those who have exceptionalities. So with a system that's already very difficult, I wonder how this will make it better or if it will make it more cumbersome. They're the experts in the field, not me, but the hard work over the course of the summer in education is absolutely critically important. Your thoughts? All right, shift gears. So we know that the Premier, John Hogan, has written a letter to the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, regarding promises made on the campaign trail regarding Marine Atlantic and the thought to cut the fees in and around half, whatever that means. Okay, so we do need to keep the pressure on to ensure that that happens. But a couple of things, like in the letter, apparently there's make references to one of our province's greatest barriers is geography. And of course, that's not wrong. But they talk about Marine Atlantic, and if there was a cut in fees, that it would have a direct impact on reducing cost of living issues. That's where I think there's a big question mark. Does anybody really think that if the fees were cut in half, that all of a sudden some of the fees paid for instance inside the world of trucking, that those savings would be reflected in my grocery bill, for instance? It's hard to picture a world where that would be the case. It would be nice, but it's hard to picture. In addition to that, since we had a call one day last week from a gentleman who was frustrated about, the ability to book passage on Marine Atlantic. And the basic summary, not to put words in the fellow's mouth, but the basic summary, and was followed up by a copious number of emails, is about whether or not there should be a priority list that gives, or hierarchy, that gives priority to people from this province to have first crack at passage. I think that makes sense, but how does that work with what the role Marine Atlantic plays in tourism and the economic impact of tourism? Look, I get it. If you were planning to go to Halifax for whatever, and you needed to be there on the 16th of July, and you'd like to be back at the end of the week, but the first return trip that you could book is, say, for instance, in the middle of August, then that just rules out Marine Atlantic as an option for you. So is there such a thing that could be at least discussed about what a priority list would look like? I think in the world of the shipping of, perishable goods, obviously they're at the top of the list. But other than that, for individuals from this province, living in this province that would like to book a crossing, is that something that could actually even be worked out? It's an interesting thought and an interesting conversation. And if you'd like to further it, we can do it. And it's sticking with the ferries, boy, oh boy. Given the protests in Fogo Island, of course, to keep the Astron on the run, it worked. But that, of course, doesn't work for the residents of Bell Island. and they are in my email inbox. Couple of things. So, I mean, good for Fogo Island, but it does very much feel like pitting one community against the other. And I don't think the residents and or the mayors of either one, whether it be Fogo Island or Change Islands or Bell Island, want to do that. But of course, they have to advocate on behalf of their residents and the businesses. So we're told the morale is low and the emotions are running hot. Well, certainly my email says they're running hot. So what can be done? One major league issue inside this is even when the folks at Fogo Island, whether it be Mayor Shea or others, they didn't find out about the decision to keep the Astron on that run from the government. They found out from the media. And neither of the mayors say they've heard directly from the minister responsible. Look, even if they're going to be given answers they don't like, it's probably a good opportunity to have that conversation. And again, every time we have a complaint offered by a resident of an island serviced by a ferry, it's that very quick thought that people want me to say to them, well, move. Some of that's easier said than done. I mean, is there going to be a time into the future where some of these islands will indeed entertain a relocation vote? Maybe. You know, it's coming sometime in the future, I would suggest. It's a very dirty word. It's a difficult conversation. But yes, some of this will happen. You know, you look at one of the more recent ones, and a few things on that front. So, Galtus. They voted, I think it was 64% in favor of moving. That falls short of the government set threshold of 75%. Then there's, I think, big questions that we really need to have a good understanding, and the government should be working on this today, is about what eligibility looks like. Like in some communities, people who have been deemed eligible to vote had already left. It might have been their home, but of course, if I have already sold my home, I've left that community, whether it be Galtus or anywhere else, and I still get the right to vote, how do you think I'm going to vote? I'm going to vote to relocate. Why? Because I already did it. And so now I get that government money, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of $275,000, which is a big sum of cash. So I'm not going to say that this community or that community should relocate. Not all the islands are created equal, though, either. Some have economies of scale that make them a bit more viable than others, possibly. But every time we have these conversations, I immediately get tons of messages saying people simply have to move. And of course, again, easier said than done, but it's a conversation that will be entertained, whether it be at people's own supper tables or in the community at large, and it can be divisive. Of course it can, but it's the difficult conversations are the ones with having, you want to talk about it. Let's go. All right, a few more quickies. So apparently the media is going to get a tour of the new ambulatory hub, which is in the old Costco building on Stavanger Drive. Few things on that front. So adding access into the healthcare system is obviously a good thing and a very good idea. But when we know that we've entered into a lease agreement, once again, 20 years to the tune of some $82 million, similar to the conversation when the provincial government decided to lease the Comfort Inn on Airport Road versus buy it. The old Costco building was for sale for quite a long time. If there was the thought that in the east end of town, they needed to find a site that would be conducive to this type of hub for some urgency care, and x-ray and ultrasound and those types of things, fair enough, but how did we not entertain buying it? How did we not entertain buying the Comfort Inn if it was going to be a play that government had in consideration? So, yes, the media will get a tour. I think it's at 10 o'clock this morning. Representative of VOCM will be there, and we'll be able to understand a bit more about it after the media gets to have a look at it. But the leases versus the buy-in, I don't know. What do you think? All right. Let's see here. A couple more. Mr. Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and of course running in the by-election in the middle of August out in Battle River Crowfoot. I'm pretty sure the name of that very safe Conservative riding is. He was in Alberta recently, of course, and apparently took some pretty serious backlash from some Alberta separatists when asked, should Alberta remain in the country? And I think what Mr. Poilievre said is the right answer, in my opinion, is that yes, Alberta should remain as a part of Canada. And that's not sitting well with some folks out there. Now, the polling comes in around 30% would be willing to entertain a referendum on the possibility for Alberta to separate from the country, even though I think that that's a terrible idea. Certainly a terrible idea for the rest of the country. I would imagine it's a terrible idea for Alberta as well. But then Mr. Poilievre also making news, or attempting to make news, regarding the Prime Minister and the assets that have been put into a blind trust. Mr. Poilievre says, in the interest of transparency, the Prime Minister should divest all of his holdings. Now, Mark Carney hasn't played this very smart either, saying that he only had cash and real estate as part of his holdings, when, of course, that's not true. He's got an extensive stock portfolio, and yes, it has been put into a blind trust. Whether or not you think the ethics rules, ethics laws need to be changed in this country, the fact of the matter is that this has been published by the Ethics Commissioner. The holdings are in a blind trust, and that is exactly what the law says has to happen. Now, of course, Mr. Poilievre, and this is not just about Poilievre or anybody else, but the rank hypocrisy that is just dominating politics is hard on the head. It is. It's not that long ago. A blind trust was perfectly fine for someone on the Conservative side of the aisle. And in that case, it was the pretty famous conversation regarding Nigel Wright, who came in to be the Chief of Staff for then Prime Minister Stephen Harper. And of course, Nigel Wright, seriously successful person. Well, I actually met Nigel Wright before. And blind trust perfectly fine then, but not perfectly fine now. Again, if the country thinks that we need to change the rules regarding ethics, that's one thing. But as the rules stand today, as they did back then, what else does anybody want someone to do? Now, again, the Prime Minister played footloose and fancy free with what he said were his holdings versus what are his actual holdings. But anyway, that's just going to be the way politics works, I guess. We're just going to have to sift through it as best possible. And regarding conflict of interest and conflict of interest screens, even in the world of Bill C-5, there was no amendments in the Senate, but there were amendments at the House of Commons level. And that was why? To protect the bill and the nation-building project legislation best possible from conflicts. And there was a lot of things. Some of the holdings from Brookfield assets, of course, where Mr. Carney was the chair of the board, all that type of stuff. But blind trust, good or bad? We'll see. All right. And boy, you know, we can deflect from things like this whole Epstein list shenanigans and what's not going to be told to the general public. But I think, look, there's plenty of domestic issues and plenty of issues that we can point directly back to federal government policy in this country. Of course there is. But the ongoing tariff threat is really starting to have a problem with investment. We have long been concerned with the willingness for companies, for individuals to invest in Canada. This ain't helping. And nor do I think it's helping Alberta investment when they talk about separating. But anyway, so August the 1st, 35% on top of everything else. At some point, can someone let us know, can someone let the federal government know and our negotiating team exactly what's going to have to be done to satisfy any of these negotiations to a deal that we already had? Just think about it. The border. Okay, $1.3 billion investment in the border. Right? The digital services tax. Walked away. Eliminated. And whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea, but it was one of the requests being made. And now it's supply management. Again. Yes, there's long been tariffs, but these things have been negotiated. And you talk about people throwing around the isms. The socialism of the dairy farm industry in the United States is clear. It's a heavily subsidized industry. And the worry and the reason for supply management is not to produce too much product domestically and to keep the Americans from flooding the market, given that the federal government absolutely subsidizes that industry to the hilt. So anyway, what's going to satisfy to get to some sort of renegotiated trade deal and what this might mean in the world of deflecting from other issues, I'll leave it up to you. And man, oh man, is the the slate of candidates for the Provincial Liberal Party ever going to look different whenever the election is? I assume in the fall. No Andrew Fury, Siobhan Cody, Andrew Parsons, John Abbott, Steve Crocker, John Haggie, Scott Reid. That's a pretty significant turnover for some pretty high level and high profile members of cabinet and former premier. And still on that front, Premier Hogan, can someone please let us know the details of the quote unquote settlement that saw John Abbott resign as the member for St. John's East Kitty Vitty, sticking with his ministerial responsibilities until the election is called. But if there was a settlement, can someone fill us in as to what else was in the settlement? I don't know, but that's a huge turnover. Get lots of people opining as to why they think that is, whether it be writing on the wall or whether it be the Premier or whether it be whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is, that's the Liberals trying to fill some pretty high-profile candidates spots on the ballots in those various voting districts in the fall. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just before we get to the callers, an email from someone who works in childcare. And it's just a gentle reminder look, I know that people are in a panic and the frustration level is very high if you can't find a space for your child. But for the wait list, say for instance, if a centre has a wait list of 500 but only 15 spaces available, not everyone is going to be accommodated, obviously. So apparently there's some pretty testy, potentially nasty back and forth sometimes between the families and the administrators. So, look, I get your frustration 100% sitting in this chair. How could I not? But it's worthwhile to understand that they can't accommodate everybody, and I'm sure they would love to if possible. Let's begin this morning on line number 2. Good morning, Dennis O'Keefe. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How are you?
Top shelf today. How about you?
Good for you. Pretty good, I must say. But I need your help now.
Okay.
I got two things. One is your help. If I'm sure you might be able to help. My 16-year-old granddaughter lost her Garmin watch last night. It's a Garmin watch with a white strap, and it was somewhere between Southlands and Admiralty Wood. So if there's anybody else there who happened to pick up that watch, if they'd give me a buzz, that'd be the best way to get it back to her.
Sure hope it happens because, they're not only expensive, but there's probably lots of data in there that you'd like access to. Maybe some of it's backed up in the cloud. I have no earthly idea. But so lost Garmin watch, if you pick it up, Doc knows who owns it, 16-year-old granddaughter.
Yeah, and when you're 16 years old, it's a huge thing, right? It's something that means a lot to her, and it'd be great if she could get it back.
Hope so.
Hope so. The other thing, Paddy, I did talk to Tim Powers yesterday on this whole tariff issue on trade with Donald Trump, and talked about the fact that the Prime Minister meeting today in Ottawa with the premiers and trying to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Now, I got a few suggestions that I made public yesterday on VOCM, and I figured I'd also touch base with you on it, and that is my advice to the gentleman up in Ottawa today would be, first of all, we have to move away from total dependence on the United States when it comes to trade. So that's one thing we can do to help ourselves. We can make that happen, and not that we have to stop trading with the United States or anything like that, but we have to move away from being totally independent and move toward new trading avenues with European and Asian economies.
I think that's work that's ongoing, but that's long-term stuff, right? It's the concern here is how do you navigate the short term? I have no earthly idea.
And I'm going to get to that, too.
Okay.
But this is something we can do as well as what we're doing now. Very slowly, it's a snail's pace trying to open Canada to free trade between the provinces. And that's something they have on the books. And again, but that's long-term, and this is an immediate situation. So, okay, dealing with that situation, we're into really a David and Goliath situation. We're quite familiar with the old analogy of the David and Goliath and the elephant and the mouse when it comes to comparing the American economy with the Canadian economy. So how can we deal with that in an immediate position? And what I would suggest, first of all, is we have to stand firm with Trump, and we got to stop acting around like pushovers and implementing measures that you know and I know have little effect on Mr. Trump. I mean, Mr. Trump has said, in fact, publicly, that there's nothing Canada can do to hurt the United States, that we are totally dependent on them, that whole message that he gets out every now and again.
And it's not true.
And it's not true. We know that. So here's what I think we should do immediately. At that meeting today process given what's happening over the last week or two. So we all learn early in life how to defend ourselves. We all know when it comes to human beings in a physical fight, we all know where the critical positions are that can guarantee that you can successfully deal with somebody like Goliath, or in this case, Donald Trump. So what I'm suggesting that they do in Ottawa today is to use that analogy and sit down and have, God knows there's enough bureaucrats, and identify what are the critical resources that will have the most major impact on the United States and do the most and hurt the most if they are implemented. And then secondly, they have to be, once they identified, here's what we can do, and we know, you know, and I know, it's all resource-based, it's gas and oil, it's electricity. Ford had that idea back a few months ago, and of course he backed away from it ultimately. But we all know what we have, that if we tariff these things or if we increase the prices down into the United States, it will have a major, major, major impact on the United States. And that's the only thing we can do. We identify the critical points, and then when the time comes, we have to have the guts to put them in place.
Okay, a couple of things. So that's basically Ontario Energy, Alberta Oil, Saskatchewan Potash. They're the three big ones, I think.
Yeah.
The measure has to be very carefully calculated, though, because the reason Ford walked away from being so stern on this front is that you have to understand how that might be also a self-inflicted wound. You know, because if you try to do it all at the same time, and for starters, you're not going to get all the provinces to cooperate anyway. We know that to be true. But if you took one item, for instance, like I mentioned, supply management. The Americans could flood the Canadian market because the American government heavily subsidizes the dairy industry. If we, say, for instance, thought that what you're saying is a good idea and sold not 1 ounce of potash to the American agricultural industry this year, and all of that lost revenue was backfilled by the government of Canada, that would be an absolute gut punch. Now, is that good business? Is that good politics? Is that good faith? No, but we're not involved with someone who's practicing good economic policy or good faith and or good politics. So I don't know where we go from here, but it would be nice what would satisfy the other side of the table. So it was all about the border. We invest in the border. It's all about the issues regarding fentanyl and the border. We address it as best possible, right? Then it's about the digital services tax. It goes away. So now supply management. We just saw a bill go through Parliament that said supply management cannot be used as a trading tool. And it was passed unanimously. So how do we utilize any of these things? And what's actually going to make a meaningful difference when you have a completely reckless negotiating partner? I don't know.
Well, you're right, Paddy. I mean, look, we are in a fight. And if we do nothing, we lose. And not only do we lose economically, but we lose in terms of any reputation we have in the world, because we're just sitting back and letting it happen. So we can't go down that avenue. So the only avenue that we have to go down is the one that I'm suggesting and you're suggesting, and that is identify the weapons that we have, potash, or it could be electricity, it could be oil, or there's a number of critical resources that are essential to the United States in terms of even their military. And if push comes to shove, then boy, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. There's also something to be said for doing it without the semblance of bravado that the other side, will call it, is displaying. You know, a good faith partner that's willing to negotiate for a mutually beneficial outcome here, which we already did. This gets lost in the conversation. We had a deal. It's been broken based on absolutely nothing. Other than one person calls himself a tariff guy. What that even means, I have no idea. Doc, I appreciate the input and the time. And one more time, if someone picked up that Garmin watch, Doc's 16-year-old granddaughter would sure love to have it back. So if you contact us or you contact Dennis himself, let's see if we can't reunite the two.
You got I'll give my phone number, Paddy, 709.
Yeah. 709-
685-5657. We'll get me right away and make a 16-year-old happy.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Doc.
Thanks, Freddie. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Fogo Island. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Alison Coffin. You're on the air.
Well, good morning, Paddy Daly. How are you, sir?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
I am doing well, and I'd like to chat to you today on behalf of the lovely folks I met in the Fogo Island Ferry on Friday morning.
Okay.
So as we were going out for the weekend to go fishing, and it was myself and my parents and my brother. So a group of us were traveling together, and as we turned into the Gander Bay Highway, flicked on to hear you chatting with Mayor Shea and said, oh dear, now the ferry is probably going to be delayed, but that's okay. We're prepared. We've got drinks, we've got snacks. We know that there's often a wait. We'll be all right. So we get to the ferry, and there's, of course, no cell service. There's no ferry in sight. And the word is now that, okay, the Ashtron's been tied up. It's not going to be let go. And the veteran is disabled. So we don't have any direct messaging happening. There's not a billboard up. There's not a marquee up. There's very little cell phone service, scattered radio service. And all we're getting is kind of this telephone message where someone down at the beginning of the line says, we think this is what happened, and it kind of gets relayed up and the message gets changed. Eventually, I make my way down to talk to a fellow who's a dock worker, and he said, well, the veteran is not well, it's going to tie up, and he says, don't go in the washroom, we don't have any power, the washrooms aren't working, because there's no running water there. The tickets can't be taken because there's no power, and this guy is now being sent up the line to talk to everybody in line saying, well, if you're coming over for a day trip now, you should turn around because you're not going to get over anyway. So he's actively discouraging tourists to leave, right? So while we're there, just to give you a sense of who's trying to get on the ferry at this time, there's people coming out who want to go fishing, who's from the island like we were. There are locals there just who had come out for an appointment or a vacation and just want to get home. There's people coming for day trips. There's people who have cabins and vacation rentals. And there's people coming to the inn. And everyone's kind of scrambling like, all right, we're down a ferry. We think the second one might be down. What do we do about all of this? So it's complete lack of communication. There's no accessibility to any form of direct communication, be it a marquee or even like go to this website and we'll give you active updates. And there's no running water and no washroom facilities. And I don't know if you know the Fogo Island Ferry at all, but it's kind of in a point, and the only thing that's there is the ticket wicket, the dock for the ferry, a chip truck, and a washroom in the little administrative janitorial area. So you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. You can't leave to get a snack. You can't leave to go to the washroom. You can't leave to get cell service. So from a customer service point of view, it's absolutely ridiculous. As well, along the way, the highway has poor cell phone service, and the roads are poorly maintained. But this is almost ridiculous. I'm half embarrassed to admit it. But as we were coming along the highway, you have to take this one final turn out. And the sign and the growth on the road were so bad, we missed the sign and we actually missed the last turnoff, because the growth was so heavily over the road that just slid on past and went, hang on, did we miss that? And had to turn and come back. So can you imagine the person who was just coming out there for the first time trying to go to the Fogo Island Inn, are the pinnacle of tourism in Newfoundland? So I wanted to call in and give that perspective, because I think there's a number of things that can be immediately done to improve that situation, the very least of which is running water and washroom facilities, but also proper communication. Just let people know what's going on and make it easier to get there. So that's what I wanted to say on behalf of the people there. Sorry it was a bit of a rant.
No problem. So insofar as communication goes, look, and this is not about high-speed broadband or what have you, but If the person running the ticket wicket was given a phone call with updated information and had just on their keyboard put it in, and then there's a digital display outside the ticket wicket, that's just so fundamentally easy. I don't know why we can't do that. There's no good reason why we can't do it, because you could have up-to-the-date information shared within seconds.
There you go.
Okay.
And the correct information. An outhouse would have been better than the washroom facilities.
Sure.
Like that one, right?
And just a couple other contributing components of this fairy kerfuffle is, yes, the Veteran was scheduled to go down. It was for a short time, but it was back on. While the Astron was being blocked, so to speak, the Beaumont Hamel came back on the run on Bell Island. So there's a few more issues beyond simply people blocking access to the Astron. I wanted to get that out there for the sake of accuracy. So anyway, there you go.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. There were many, many mitigating factors, and this, I'm not even talking about the ferry service itself. I'm just talking about just getting there and the experience of waiting and not knowing. It was this weird purgatory. And from someone who's from the island, like my parents, come from Fogo Island. They've been doing this for 80 years. And they left. They were so frustrated. They're like, I don't think we're ever going to do this again. This is horrible. Like, you've picked them off. What have you done to the other people, right?
Yeah, one of my boys is on Fogo Island at this very moment. They seem to have no real issue getting there. It remains to see what it'd be like getting back. Anything else on the Fogo Island Fair before I have another question for you, Alison?
No, that's just fine. I just wanted to get that out to let you know that was, that's the user experience, not, Okay, anyway. Okay. You have another question.
I do.
I expect I know what it is.
I'm sure you do. So I'm sure you're privy to some details. Are you able to share some details about what the settlement looked like with whether it be yourself and your court case regarding the most recent provincial election? And everyone knows mail-in ballots and all that stuff. You came up short, I think, 53 or 54 votes, losing to John Abbott. He steps down as the member for St. John's East Kitty Vitty, keeping his ministerial portfolio. The government keeps referring to this as the settlement. Can you help us understand what the rest of the settlement looks like?
Well, I mean, essentially, we mutually agreed on the statement put out by Elections Newfoundland and Labrador. So we've all signed on to that. And what we've all agreed to is that I would, myself and Weimer would drop our suit. Elections Newfoundland and Labrador would admit that errors had been made and that they were actively working on them. Now, I need to point out that, there's a recognition that not all of the errors can be fixed. And there are a whole pile of things that the court case did not address that we all know needs to be addressed in a massive democratic reform. But this is the tip of the iceberg, and I hope this triggers additional changes. And I'd actually like to work with Elections Newfoundland and Labrador on some of the other things that, again, are beyond the scope of the court case, but things that I have learned in my research and in all the reading that I've been doing in tangential things. The other thing was that Weimer and I got an apology. Elections Newfoundland and Labrador said yes, Weimer should have voted, and it was an error on their part that he did not get his ballot. So that was a really key thing. And it was really, really important to us to ensure that the seat had been vacated before the next, before a by-election. And knowing that there wasn't going to be a by-election, I mean, just logistically and in terms of time, we weren't able to pull one off. But before the next general election, because we all know that there is an inherent preference or advantage to being the incumbent. So by resetting the seat and having it vacated, there was technically no incumbent, and that allowed for more of a level playing field in St. John's East Kitty Vitty. So that's a real win for absolutely everybody there.
So just in summary, an apology, an admittance by Elections NL of mistakes having been made, and Mr. Abbott resigns, consequently no incumbent on the ballot. That's it.
That's the course of it. And we of course dropped our case.
Yeah.
And of course Jim Lester and Sheila Fitzgerald also dropped their cases. And that's the gist of it, right? Because you have to remember that the legislation and all of the legislation that's involved in that, there were several pieces, right? Like the House Assembly Act and the Elections Act and a pile of other things, which really limited the things that we could potentially achieve in this, right? because they can't we don't know whether or not I would have won that election.
Nope.
However, we did put forward that there were substantial errors. John Abbott had said he was going to bring forward 140 witnesses. I really only needed 53 to say 53 people that didn't get a ballot to say, well, look, there was a reasonable chance that there were errors and perhaps the result could potentially be different, and we'd like a do-over there. So we can't say, well, Allison should have won and Allison should get 4 years' salary. Like, government can't do that, or the legislation can't do that. The court can't order that because they can't make that leap, right? So that's not a thing that could have happened. We couldn't have. We couldn't force a by-election. We could only ask for the seat to be vacated, and then other legislation came in place that would have triggered that by-election, right?
Okay.
So the judge would have had said, okay, so that kind of make a bit more sense?
Yeah, I think so, and I pretty much knew all of that. But was there any demands or requests for Lucy Stoyles or Crystal Lynn Howell to vacate their seat? Because those are the three districts that were part of this conversation of mistakes being made or potential wrongdoing.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that had to do with Jim Lester's case and Sheila Fitzgerald's case. Our case had absolutely nothing to do with that. So much as I would like to have seen that happen, and in fact, I would have liked to have seen in that case maybe we should have had all of the seats vacated, but certainly those other two needed to be vacated, yes, but that was outside the scope of the suit that we had, and Jim Lester and Sheila Fitzgerald's cases weren't far enough along to get to that agreement. Certainly, I mean, there's lots and lots and lots more details about what exactly went on throughout the course of the election. My discovery, like all of the evidence that I gave being questioned by my lawyers and their lawyers, is in a court docket. So everything that I know has been put there. Certainly a lot of the information that we were going to present in court has already been released to the courts. So there's lots of information there that can be pulled out, and I think you and I don't have time right now. Maybe
no, we don't,
time we
unfortunately.
can talk about some of those things.
So
right?
just a yes/no. Was part of the settlement that John Abbott not be allowed to run again?
No.
Okay. And there we go. I appreciate the time, Alison.
I had nothing to. I couldn't say that, right?
Okay. I appreciate the time. I do have to get to the break, but thanks for the call this morning.
No problem. Good chatting, Patty.
Thanks, Alison. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Jen Brown, who's the Executive Director at the St. John's International Women's Film Festival, is in the queue, and then it's you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Executive Director at the St. John's International Women's Film Festival. That's Jen Brown. Good morning, Jen. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you?
Excellent today. Thanks. How about you?
Oh, it's summer. It's sunny. Yeah, I can't help but love today.
It's summer and it's sweltering. Man, yesterday afternoon was something else.
True, absolutely.
Let's talk about a free upcoming screening. Oh, sorry, Jen, you had something to say about the weather?
Absolutely. No, I was going to say upcoming screening in a beautiful air-conditioned venue. What a plus.
Very attractive option. Okay, what are we talking about?
So the St. John's International Women's Film Festival are really excited to be partnering with St. John's Pride. So happy Pride, everybody. Really special time of the year for all of us. So we are really looking at how to bring some awesome films to their programming. So tomorrow, Wednesday, July 16th, we are presenting a free film screening of Lakeview. It's a really great comedy about this queer friend group who spends a weekend at the lake house celebrating a divorce. So it's a big divorce summer party movie, which is a bizarre, wonderful kind of summary of it. Tara Thorne is the director. She's joining us actually from Nova Scotia for the panel. Veronica Diamond, who's this incredible local comedian and filmmaker, she's joining us as well to do a Q&A after the film. But yeah, we really wanted to put some joy out there and some great films, get people out. It's totally free. You don't need to register. Just show up. Doors open at 6. The film starts at 6:30, so also a nice early night kind of event. Beautifully air-conditioned, but it's going to be a really fun event. The film has screened at festivals all over the world to really excellent reviews. And, it's really nice to be able to get out there, meet people, and, Pride's all about community, so how to have these big conversations and how to have some fun and how to meet people and celebrate this week.
It's amazing how the world has changed. We're having a feel-good rom-com, except it's about divorce.
Yeah.
You know, it's the good news.
Exactly.
It's the feel-good of divorce, which used to be a real traumatic down-in-the-mouth issue. Now all of a sudden can be celebrated through the form of comedy. Have you seen the movie?
I have. Yeah,
Okay.
it's incredible. Really great actors, super relatable, and just like, that feel-good summer movie that has a lot of heart, of course, and that beautiful connections. But, it's summer, it's joy, it's a lot of laughs. And again, it's free, it's early. We're trying to remove a lot of those barriers so that people can come out and test it out and bring your friends and check it out, and also the opportunity to meet the filmmaker behind it. Our audiences here are so engaged, are so eager to ask questions and talk and kind of share their opinions about the films. And any artists who come from all over the world love that about our audiences and our community members. And for filmmakers as well, come out, meet one another, or anyone who's just looking for, I love movies, I'm sick of what's on my TV, get out of your house, come downtown, and nice to make a low stakes night out of it as well, which is really fun, and we're excited to be able to present that. So
with free admission, what have you, is this simply a first come, first serve?
First come, first serve, but it's at the hall. There's a lot of seats. I'd encourage you to come on down and come out tomorrow night.
Just a quick update on where we are in prep for the big festival.
Absolutely. So October is our big signature event, year 36,
Wild.
which is wild. How lucky are we? So we will be celebrating our 36th annual festival, October 21st to the 25th, and we are in the thick of our film programming. So this year, again, we've received over 1,000 film submissions from all over the world, and from that, we will screen less than 7% of those, which is, a really hard process, hard in the best way. The content is incredible. We actually just locked our opening night film, which is really exciting. Some hints that I think it's going to certainly resonate with local audiences, very much so. But in September, so September 21st is when we announce the lineup for our October festival, but things are well underway. Some really exciting developments come together, some excellent films and panels and artists, and we're eager to show off local talent and to get everyone out for some more excellent movies. And that's why this week, partnering with St. John's Pride is such a gift on many levels, but an opportunity to introduce ourselves to folks and be like, if you like this, stay tuned. We do film programming year-round and industry programming and fun community events. This is kind of amping us up and getting us even more excited for October Festival time.
I'm not going to ask you about opening night roster or what have you, and I know with Mary Sexton at the helm, along with her son Nick of Skeet, I hate to pick and choose winners, what's great, what's not so great around these parts, because we produce a lot of terrific work, cinematic work.
Absolutely.
Skeet was out of control.
Absolutely.
I could not believe how good it was. I knew it was going to be pretty good, and I actually did a bit of work with Nick on it, and I just felt lucky to be included, even though in a very minuscule part of it. But that turned out to be just a real gem.
Absolutely. Well, last year at our festival, we celebrated Mary Sexton at our, for year 35, with a special Trailblazers Award, really paying homage to some of the women who've been leading, creating this film industry for the past, 50 years, really. If we really traced their history of film in this province. Now, Mary Sexton obviously hasn't been involved that long, but she is one of those pioneers of the film industry here. And the success of Skeet is certainly going to be a case model that we're exploring at this year's festival, we hope, to really look at that distribution model of someone who looked at a lot of obstacles in the industry and how hard it is to get your film distributed and how expensive and the barriers and the obstacles there. And she really led a, why follow the rules? Let's make our own rules and let's make this happen. And her intuition, her business skills, her obviously her vision has catapulted that film to incredible success. And success is because it got in front of a lot of audiences, and that's what we need. And that's why the film festival exists, because here especially we've got Cineplex, and if you don't want to see a Marvel movie, you're kind of out of luck. So when we are one of the only opportunities to see independent films, as well as there's a couple of other festivals here in the province, it's so important. And also that theatrical run. When you do see a film playing in a theater, how much of an impact buying a ticket makes, especially that first weekend. It really does set up the filmmakers for, are you going to be able to access more funding? Are you going to be able to access a longer theatrical run? It's a really make or break situation for filmmakers. So it's really important to get out there. It's such a beautiful story of our community showing up in such a big way for that film. And I hope people really resonate with that film, and they also see, like, right, I have me showing up and me supporting independent films and artists in our province actually really makes a significant impact. And I hope that we see some of those folks at our festival and at other festivals and other screenings. It really does make a difference. It's a really beautiful thing to be able to go into a lot of spaces, even, internationally as a festival, and have people like, I know of Newfoundland. This is a film, and this is a film, and this is an artist. And, it's such an honor to be able to brag about. You're right. And stay tuned for more. What kind of doors has Mary Sexton opened now because of the success of this film? And what's the projects that's going to come after this is really, the rally was really exciting.
Sean Dalton was outstanding. And last quick comment before I have to get going is, that's not quite like Mary Sexton to be making up her own rules.
Right? Imagine. Women leaders here, paving paths. Never heard of it. No.
Jen, good to have you on. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks so much.
You're
Take
welcome.
care.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Jen Brown, Executive Director at the St. John's International Women's Film Festival. Time for the news. Then it's time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Well, Miles Russell was going to run for Ward number 1 in the upcoming municipal elections. Of course, Ward 1 in the city of St. John's. Now has decided to run for an at-large position. Join us on line number 5 is Miles Russell. And good morning, Miles. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Yeah, so thanks for announcing that. Like I said, I was announced for Ward 1, and now I've decided to switch to at-large for the city of St. John's.
Any specific reason as to why?
I'll tell you, like, Patty, the more people I spoke to, it became apparent that, a lot of people were hoping they could vote for me. 4/5 of the city are not Ward 1. And, so the more I got into talking to people and people asking, can your policies apply to the rest of the wards and the rest of the city, and chatting to a few councillors and previous councillors and people who are other candidates, it became clear that, the work I do, the policies I work on are citywide. So, I've had there's a good few folks that already know that I have been, shifting this to at-large. It's been overwhelmingly supportive. So, though it's a much bigger game, it's a much bigger ground game to play. So, I was looking for volunteers. But, yeah, that's. I think it's a better fit for the work I do in my not-for-profit, in my advocacy world. So, I think, I think it's the right move, and that's what we're going for.
Fair enough. What have we talked about this morning?
So, Patty, what I want to talk about today was listening to the Amble this morning. There's a lot of things with zoning and, I like to talk about housing and street safety and that, but you brought up one specific item about daycares. And, I've talked to a lot of folks who are looking for daycares, and the question often becomes, why don't we see more? And so my original discussion I wanted to have today was about discretionary land use zoning and permitted land use, because that's how the city is divided. I've chatted about it before, so I don't want to belittle that too much. But I wanted to bring up daycare specifically, and the fact that they don't show up in all the zones. And I feel, personally, that's a common good. I don't think something like a daycare should be restricted in where it can be placed in the city. I don't know if you have that same kind of thought.
I think it should be, you should be able to put a daycare in most parts of the city, but there's always going to be concerns depending on things like evaluation of traffic flow and traffic congestion and those types of things, opportunities to get in and out, access and egress type of things that need to be considered. But that's not saying that we should be very restrictive on daycare, because it's absolutely in the public's interest.
Yeah, agree. So, when we look at something like a school or a daycare or, a youth high traffic area, yes, we have to obviously consider safety on access, like major roads. But the more interesting thing that I find about it is when you look through our regulations, for the most part, daycare shows up only in a few zones as a permitted use, i.e. a developer or a contractor or even a person who wants to open a daycare. They could want to build or renovate. And for the most part, in most of the city, that would not be permitted. The city would say, nope, it does not meet our zoning regulations. Or if it falls in the discretionary in a few other zones, it would then go to council. So, when people ask things, like a common question I get asked a lot as well is, why don't I see more stores around? Like, there's no stores physically in Mount Terrace. There's, one convenience store in the middle of Cowan Heights properly. And it's simply not allowed in the zoning. So, I've been at housing meetings, Patty, where there's a chunk of land in, say, Mount Terrace where it's zoned for a higher density, but it's not being used for that. And the developer who owns it, or whoever owns the land, it might be a private, I'm not sure, they haven't made a proposal. So the question becomes, why isn't that specific lot being used for the purpose that the city has prescribed? And I think this is a big problem that a lot of my advocacy work, and the reason I'm running in council in the first place, is this world where the city has prescribed what they want to go everywhere. And it is extremely restrictive, Patty. Like, you know, we're looking at something like Southlands Phase 4A and 5. That's filling in the rest of Southlands between Galway. That whole area is less than 400 homes. I think it's like 320 homes, and it's massive. If we built that like other parts of the city, for example, like Rabbittown, Georgetown, you know, parts where we still have single detached homes and family homes, we'd have over 800 homes. Depending on if we add a bit more mixed use, we get 1,000 homes in there, not including apartments. So I just look at this thing and say, like, why would the city leave so much housing on the table? Why would they leave so much revenue on the table and so much opportunity to build community and have safer streets? And it boggles the mind, Patty. It truly does.
Especially when there's a shortage of housing options. There is a Marie's convenience store in Mount Terrace. I just want to put that out because I look at it every single day. I can see it from here at this moment. A couple of things on daycare. This is more a question than anything else. Is with the zoning issues and what's permitted or not, are some of those based on the fact that daycares have been applied for and given a green light, so consequently those zones would be permissible of a daycare, and others maybe haven't seen an application, consequently nothing's on the table? Or is that how that works?
That is part of it. I mean, part of it becomes also, you know, if someone wants to open a daycare and the first thing they do is they go on to St. John's website, they look at the zone, they say, oh, I'm not allowed to build it. So they simply, and truthfully, that's a lot. You know, my neighbor just asked me the other day, hey, what about these rear lot units? I'd like to inquire about it. It's a little bit of a difficult process because these aren't, you know, there's a lot of things in these regulations that it's essentially a giant book of legalese with engineering on top of it. So it is hard to read and it's hard to parse. So, you know, if someone's looking to build a daycare, that's the first step is, can it be permitted? And, you know, when things are built in it, like there's different types of zoning regimes we use. And like essentially St. John's just copied what every other North did. Very, I would say, non-people focused planning. It's been very car focused. And, you know, cars are great tools, but they're not the only tool in the box. And so we could have like a hierarchical zoning that, you know, gets into in this entire type of region, like anything that is apartment, residential, or commercial, or say basically non-industrial, that would permit that. It would be an easier way to write regulations. Basically, you wouldn't have what we have, which is 75 zones. You'd have maybe 12 zones and a hierarchy of what can go where, you know, saying things like we will not put industrial buildings next to houses, these kind of things. But that takes, you know, a bit of, I would say, a want or a will by council to, you know, do this kind of work. To, you know, direct city staff. You know, city staff are doing the best they can. And, you know, look at something like the 120 Marchant Road apartment building. I don't know if I heard a brief chat about it last week. That's now more public. That is zoned properly. So, of course, there's no opposition from council because there's nothing they can physically do about it. As long as it meets the engineering guidelines and the construction guidelines, it'll work. And, you know, tall buildings like that tend to make people worried. So there's other mechanisms other than this discretionary and, you know, permitted use zoning that we can use. And it's just, you know, the daycares one really made me think today. And like while I was on the queue, I just started looking up the regulations and trying to see where do they fit. And it's surprisingly in a lot less of the city than I would hope. And like that's just one example of, you know, many types of things we can do.
Fair enough. And I still don't 100% understand how the process works, but point taken. If I'm someone considering opening up a regulated daycare center and I go onto the city's website to see that the location I had selected is not permissible, then I possibly drop it and apply for somewhere in Paradise or CBS or Mount Pearl. So you're right, maybe opportunities are lost simply because of the way the website reads, even though it doesn't have a whole lot of disclaimers associated with, you know, don't take this as gospel, applications are welcome, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how you would word that, but I think you know what I'm getting at. Anything else while we have you this morning, Miles?
Well, one last little part to kind of give credit to the city. There is a big block that the city has, and that is that, and this is every municipality. It goes from Cornbrook to Goose Bay, everywhere. All the municipalities, they have submitted a master plan, a municipal plan to the Department of Municipal Affairs. You can look up every town in Newfoundland and Labrador except for St. John's because they're in the St. John's Act, but the information is still there. And let's say you have a development that is zoned outside the municipal scope, i.e. it might be a current industrial area and you want to convert that because all the buildings are abandoned and you want to put some apartments, that would have to go to the provincial government, which is, I would say, bad. It is like the provincial government is not a municipal planning agency. They are not, they aren't into managing municipalities. So, even if we started to have a bit more of a reform, every one of these major changes ends up falling to the Department of Municipal Affairs, which are very backlogged and very, overwhelmed. And that's a huge delay. And there's a lot of projects. I've personally worked on a lot of affordable housing and non-market housing and seniors living homes. Projects have all been canceled because these take so long to get through. And these are good projects. Like, these will be a lot of housing for a lot of residents. And these get stopped from just delays in planning. And I know this sounds boring and drab, but it's truly one of, I think, the most important things the city needs to really address if we want to address our over 4,000 units we're missing for residents in St. John's. Like, that's our deficit in housing, let alone our other municipalities. But anyway, Patty, that's what I want to chat about today, and thank you so much for taking time.
I'm glad you called and wish you good luck on the hustings.
Cheers so much.
Thanks,
and
Miles.
have a lovely day.
You too.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. It's Miles Russell running for an at-large council position in City of St. John's. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Blake. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to do it.
Thanks. I'm the volunteer for Recovering from Religion who applied to be part of St. John's Pride, and, of course, we were removed after. I live in the Conception Bay North area, so I just wanted to tell people a little about us and how this went down. I initiated this process with the support of our board of directors, our president, Dr. Darrell Ray, and our membership for one reason: to be included. Just to state, our membership with the 2S LGBTQIA+ community at RFR, that's our acronym, Recovering from Religion. Approximately 20% of our volunteers and 25% of our leadership identify with the community. They are members of the 2S LGBTQIA community. And Patty, we want to state that we have attended over 100 Pride events in the last 5 years, and one of our members alone has attended 30 Pride events since 1995. In the history of Recovering from Religion, we have never been denied acceptance to any Pride event, and we've attended them all over the world, including Australia and New Zealand this year. And Patty, a little more about us. We actually hold monthly support groups for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and these are huge. We actually have to bring on extra volunteers because the numbers are so high. I've hosted these myself as a member of the community. We're here to help those people who have been harmed by religion. And our concern is we can't help people who don't know about us. And this is why we table at Pride events all around the world. So, of course, we are a non-religious organization, and we feel we have as much right to attend Pride events as any religious organization. We're one of the only organizations in the world that openly deals with the harms that religion have caused so many in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. In this process, Patty, I've actually had a great conversation with the Out in Faith NL group, and we discussed in email that we can provide support to this community from the perspective of a faith perspective and a non-faith perspective. And between both of our groups, we felt that we would provide great support. And again, we can't help people if they don't know why we exist, and that's why we wanted to be included in St. John's Pride. And for us, this is about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we have messaging all over social media. It's going out. We want people to see the stories. Check us out. Check out our social media. Check out our webpage. The social media stories. We have testimonials from our 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Individual members who have been helped by this organization and joined this organization. We're not here to deconvert. We're not here to cause any trouble. We want to support the community as we've always done. And we just want to tell everybody that we will be in attendance at the event in some capacity. Obviously, we don't know what capacity. So we'd like you to come visit our table wherever we are and learn about what we do to support this community. We're attending because, as it is stated, there is no going back. And the other part, we're not here to cause any trouble. Like we said, nobody needs protection from us. Like, we have been helping people in this community since the organization started in 2009.
I know Recovering from Religion is an international organization, so it's not take this for how it's intended, it's not a fly-by-night group out in Harbour Grace and nothing else. It's an international body. So if you've had this relationship with Pride events throughout the world, why were you told you were not to be included in St. John's Pride?
The messaging, of course, Eddie did an interview this morning, and we want to have a more of an in-depth discussion about why we're being excluded. We don't want to comment. We're not sure, but all we want to do is to be included. And yes, we are an international body. It is an American-based organization, and we don't have a presence here in the province yet. And this was an amazing platform for us to get a presence. So in the name of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And as a member myself, I was going to attend Pride, and this would have been a great opportunity. So we want to dig further into this. We want to know why we're excluded. It's some of the things we've told. There is some messaging that wasn't quite clear. But as for being excluded, we don't want to cause any issues. We just want to be able to attend and represent and help the community as we've been doing. As this organization, Recovering from Religion, has helped me as a member of the community. We're looking to get more information. We want to know, and ultimately our goal is simply to just say, okay, you can attend, just go off to the side, just set up your booth. We're going to be quiet. We're not yelling. We just want to be here to support.
I don't know how all these things work necessarily, but, in public spaces, I don't know what the process is of having to be invited and or given a green light if you'd like to attend. That's just something I've never really fully understood. If it's something like different bodies or organizations being included in a march, well, there's also a conversation to be had there, I would suggest. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. We can also reach out to Eddie. I heard him out of the corner of my ear this morning, but prior to my show, I'm kind of busy doing my own thing, so I didn't really hear what was said, but I will do some follow-up. It'd be nice to have some actual detailed information, and it's not for the public airwave to and fro or some sort of public spat. It's just so that we know what's going on.
Yeah, we definitely don't want a public spat.
No, I know, I understand.
It's about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So for us, and he did give a statement this morning. For us, we were invited, and then the invitation was rescinded. So that this was the issue. We went back and forth. Everything was, everything was settled. We had it was no fee because we are a not-profit organization. It is in Bannerman Park. It is a public space, so that's why we will be attending. Because we just want to get the message out there that we're there to help. We're not coming. This is not us coming to, as in protest to St. John's Pride. That is not what we're there for. We're going there to support the community, to get our name out there, to have people attend our support groups, just to continue the work that we've been doing.
So just in broad strokes, so what does Recovering from Religion actually do? Is it support groups of people who have like-minded or similar life experiences, or do you have professional therapists or counselors? What do you actually offer?
Yeah, we offer a pile of services. We have a helpline, which runs 24/7. The second biggest group that we help is the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. I've hosted a number of support groups, so we run about 75 support groups a month. And in those support groups, we have one specifically, as I said, for that community. But in every support group that I host, there are always members showing up, because they are looking for support. If they've been ostracized, whether by their religion, we're just here to help them. And we have resources. We have professionally done resources by psychologists. Our founder, Dr. Darrell Ray, is a psychologist, and this is what he got into. We offer what's called the Secular Therapy Project, and we can connect you with secular therapists who practice in only scientific methods, so that people go to therapy and they say, well, you should find a church. No, we use pure scientific methods. So like I said, our list of resources, we have online talks every week, every Monday night through RFRX. They're archived on YouTube, and a lot of them are done by members and encouraging in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. So we have a number of services we offer. Well, we're all volunteers. like I said, it's a great community, and it's a safe space for those who need somewhere to turn, part of this community.
I appreciate making time for the show, Blake. Thanks for the call, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You too. Bye-bye. Very quickly, traffic advisory just got buzzed into my phone. There's a minivan on fire on Pitts Memorial Drive, just past Kilbride, heading downtown. So if you are headed that way, maybe avoid 4 now. So minivan on fire on Pitts Memorial Drive, past Kilbride, heading downtown. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the NDP member for St. John's Centre. He's leader of the party. That's Jim Dinn. Good morning, Jim. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all.
Listen, I'm just calling to let people in Gander and Grand Falls know of our town halls on affordability and any other issue for that matter they wish to speak to. So tomorrow night, Wednesday the 16th, it's at 7 p.m. at the Elks Lodge on 6 Caldwell Street. And on Thursday, it's in Grand Falls, Windsor, again, 7 p.m., this time at the Senior Citizens Recreation Center and 25 Edwards Place. So we're hoping that as many people as want come out and share their concerns. We had one in St. John's, a few actually, and in the metro area and up in Labrador. So it's an opportunity to hear from those in the central part of the island, what their issues are as well.
Fair enough. And just on your personal front, I have having a bit of a hard time keeping track of who's in, who's out. Are you intending on running again, Jim?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am. Yeah.
Want to make sure because there's awful.
I keep looking in the media to see if my name's there, but no, it's not.
Yeah, no. The what is it that quote about the questions surrounding my death are grossly exaggerated, something like that.
Yeah, that's right. As was as some people say, I check the obituaries each day just to see if I'm there or not. But no, so far I am indeed running.
You've
staved
it off.
And part of this is the opportunity to again hear from people in this case in central Newfoundland, and to hear what in the Grand Falls, Windsor, and Gander what their issues are. Certainly, we've heard the concerns here in the people in the metro area, and actually interesting. A lot of people who attended these events are also, many of them have moved in from other parts of the island, and other parts of the province. So it's an opportunity to, we've sort of heard that, but here's an opportunity for people in these areas to voice their concerns.
This is more of we'll get into whatever specifics you want to talk about, but it's going to be an interesting election for a variety of reasons. I have no idea who's going to win either seat or hold a seat of government, but with so many high-profile incumbents not on the ballot, that does open up some opportunities. Will the party take a keen focus on some of those districts, for instance, as opposed to all 40 at the same time? Because not all 40 are created equal. The NDP probably don't have much of a shot in some, based on historical outcomes. So is there a focus going to be on some of these no-incumbent seats?
We actually, it's interesting you say that. A few weeks ago, back in June, actually, I was coming back from the West Coast, and I did stop in. I had met with 4 candidates from Sunnyside up over to Cornbrook, all women who were interested in running and were going to be candidates. So there is an interest, right, in the central part of the province areas that would not be, I guess, traditionally, but NDP, but there's a deep interest in running. So that's positive. I'll say that, yes. So we are looking at moving just simply beyond the urban, and I think we'll find that there are a lot of the issues that we've been focusing on are important and are relevant to people throughout the province. I can think of one, certainly, one that I've harped on many times, and that has to do with affordable housing. And we're finding that's a situation here. It's a concern here. It's a concern in Lab West with Jordan. It's a concern in other areas throughout the province in terms of trying to find housing, affordable housing. I was talking to a gentleman last night. He was panhandling down on Water Street, and he's from the Northern Peninsula. But again, it's about it had to do with a housing issue that he ended up moving here into the metro area. So it's a significant issue. That, and we also know that food is significant for healthcare. I think there was a report that Canadians have suffered some of the highest rates of obesity, and with that comes the rates of diabetes. And we know here in the province we have a very high diabetic or diabetes stats. And one of the issues, one of the things or the programs we've been pushing is for the provincial government to sign on to the pharmacare program, National Pharmacare Program, to help address some of those issues. So there is a significant, I think we're going to find that despite the geography, that there are similarities and concerns, and how it manifests itself exactly is. You might find the difference in terms of housing, but still housing is an issue, right?
Sure. With the province not signing on to the National Pharmacare, I don't even know if I've ever heard as to why there would be any hold up there. Because, for instance, I'm already chipping in on it, right? Well, I just filed and paid my taxes not that long ago. Some of those taxes are going to Pharmacare. Yep. So why we're not involved? Has there been any rationale offered as to why the hold up?
I have not heard any rationale, but it makes it, to me, I can't help but think making it easier to get the supplies and medication for that would have a net positive effect on the overall healthcare system in terms of people who are not into where they're maybe choosing not to take their medication for a certain time or skip a dose or so on and so forth. I see no reason for this. Other provinces have. There's an opportunity here to be part of this larger program. And to your point, Patty, you're right. We're already paying. Part of our taxes are going to help the provinces and the people who in provinces who've signed on. So why not sign on here? It would be to me. It would be, I think, a benefit going into, the summer and into the election, for that matter. But I think it would benefit the people of this province significantly, especially those who are struggling with the high price of a diabetic medication as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not lost on me that some of this might simply be a political calculation, so that when we hear from Liberal candidates, they'll be able to put this into their quiver. Mm-hmm. So it could be that, but I haven't heard anyone tell me why we aren't involved.
No, and we have no rational. I would hope it's not because it's something that was being promoted by the federal NDP. We have dental care. The same. These two things, these two programs, I think would significantly help overall in terms of if you want to look at the social determinants of health and other factors rather than just the bricks and mortars, but overall general health of people in the province would have a significant contribution to the well-being of people. So, I have yet to hear a logical reason, or any reason for that matter, as to why. We figured by now there would be, with Prime Minister Carney, that there would have been an attempt to reach out and to strike a deal on this, for sure.
Last one before I let you go. So, from where I sit, there's a more significant relationship between provincial NDP parties and their federal counterparts. Same can't necessarily be said for the Liberals and the Tories, necessarily. How bad does it hurt the provincial NDP in this province with the federal counterparts losing official party status? I know it's not a day-to-day operational thing regarding question period and funding for the offices, but that relationship is very real, I think, in the minds of the voters. So what does it mean for your party?
Interesting question, because I know after the federal election, a lot of people were coming up to me offering condolences as if I just lost a family member. And here's my response. Provincially, we form government in two other provinces. We are the official opposition. In others, we've had a tremendous response to, at conventions in other provinces. Here in this province, I'll speak to this in my 6 years as involved as an elected member, that for the first time, I think, we've had an excitement where we've had people approaching us who are interested in running and they want to run, and in areas of the province who where normally we would not have gotten, we would have struggled to find people. And the other part of it, I think that's exciting for me, in a province where at least half the population is made up of women, that we have the vast majority of our the candidates who are interested so far are women, and I think that's part of the segment of the population demographic that is underrepresented in the House of Assembly. So overall, it's a concern. To say that we're not concerned would be misleading, but I would say that we're hopeful of the fact that we've had a tremendous amount of support in the meantime, and that I think just here in St. John's East Kiddie with Sheila running, that Sheila O'Leary running, that we're going to see that district fall back into a fold, and there are others as well that will come back that will choose the NDP. I think, if nothing else, for change. I think we've been very clear, and I can speak to Jordan and I when we've spoken. We've tried to articulate a very clear vision of what can be done, as opposed to just simply railing on what we don't like. But we've tried to articulate a vision of what needs to be done to ensure the well-being of people of the province, and I think that has resonated.
Appreciate the time, Jim. Thanks for the call.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Jim Dinn, NDP member, St. John Centre, leader of the party. Let's take a break. Do not go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Good morning, Dion. You're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Paddy.
Morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, yesterday I was talking to Brian there, calling about an ongoing issue there with the water supply in the town of Great Briar on the Northern Peninsula.
What's going on?
We've been without water now since Friday noon.
It's a tough time of year to be, well, I guess it's never a good time to be without water, but in the hot summer. So do we understand what's going on? Why no water? Got any information for us?
Yeah, there's an ongoing issue here with the water lines. Is the water system was 50 years old. You know what the joiners and everything is like now, just throw it down in the ground, eh?
Yep.
Yeah, it's week after week, but it's just breaks. We had a contractor in there now last week, but the ground where the water line is coming through, just saturated. Buddy got down in it with the excavator. He just couldn't do it, he pulled out of it. Yeah, so never got nothing resolved there. Never got it fixed anyways,
So it's as fundamental as pipe needs to be replaced.
Yes, that's right, Yes, the joiners and everything, Paddy, is, you're talking about a water line, 50 years old, just throw down in the bog.
And so what were the results of the meeting? It's one thing to identify the problem, quite another to come up with a solution.
Yeah, local service district called an emergency meeting there for the committee last night there, but, they ordered another local contractor now this morning, but no MHA, no word from the MHA or nothing, right, for funding or anything for replacement. But they ordered another local contractor this morning. Now, they're supposed to be starting at 9 a.m. this morning now, fix that joint again. So hopefully we'll have a bit of water this evening, if all goes well. But it's just an ongoing issue, Paddy. Next week now it'll be a break somewhere else,
Well, yeah, I mean, it very much sounds like putting Band-Aids on. So if it's going to be inevitable that another break down the line or, closer to this joiner is just going to happen in the near future, then, paying for contractors time and time again to try to chase the problem is probably going to add up pretty quick.
Yeah, what it's like, Paddy, as soon as you fix one leak, you're building up pressure and another joiner's bust. Steel joiners in the ground, for 50 years, it don't last, It's not going to last that long.
No. And, there is that issue regarding local service districts and the opportunity to apply for money and to cost share. There's a very definitive understanding about how cost sharing works when you talk about an incorporated municipality and the province. So I'm going to have to look a little closer to see what that might look like for you folks. But who else is in that local service district? What other communities?
You got St. Carol's there. They're pretty much in the same situation with us. St. Anthony Bight, There's all 50-year-old water lines,
How many people in your community, Dion?
There's there's 33 families, roughly, around 30 families, right?
And what's everybody at? What do people do for a job? Is the fishery number one, or what's the backbone?
But they're all over the place now. Paddy is some fishing, some at the hospital, some at the grocery stores, some with the government.
Okay.
There's no, tourism. But, yeah, there's nobody no big fishing or nothing like that now, so. And 90% of the population, too, see, Paddy, is seniors, but. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's easier said than. So what are people?
People about 70 and 80-year-old, man, going to Brook now with bringing buckets of water now up by the toilet, to flush the toilet, for 4 days now.
It's a long time to go without. And, of course, if you're having to get water for something as fundamental as flushing the toilet, we're also talking about cooking and cleaning and drinking and doing the laundry. There's an endless number of uses, and it's impossible for some people at certain ages to be able to track back and forth, whether you go to St. Anthony and buy a big load of bottled water or whatever some people are probably doing. But if you're, like you say, back and forth to Brook to try to satisfy day-to-day needs in the home, that can be a lot.
Yes, by getting home from work in the evenings and stuff, and boiling water, for dishes and trying to get the kids washed and washed ourselves for working and everything is awful going on, boy.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yes, but it is, and no word from the MHA, but been emails sent off, been messages, phone calls, not a word. Only time you hear from she when she's knocking on the door now, looking get in.
Is that Crystalline Howell as your member?
That's she, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But and the local service district now, Paddy, you knows what money they got. They got enough now to do repairs, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the 90-10, the repay back the 10%. Where's a community like Great Britain now going to come up with $30,000 or $40,000? Sure, they got a job to get excavator down for a couple hours on man repairs on her.
Yeah, there's definitely a disparity between the ability for one community or one LSD versus a municipality to cost share. Now, there's plenty of municipalities out there as well who don't have any money to get involved with major repairs, whether it be water or otherwise. But I get it. I'll reach out to Crystalline Howell's office and see if we have some sort of update or understanding in her office about what's happening in your community.
Yes, Patty, sir. I've all ordered around since December 1997. The ball order on.
Amazing. There's about 180 boil order advisories in the province right now.
Yeah. But the minister, boy, she got to buckle up, boy, and help the people,
We'll see if we can't get comment from our office today, Dion. I'll do that.
Yeah, say, Patty, you got a 2-inch line there now, 50-year-old. He's down. You can just get your thumb out in now. He's down the ditch pretty much every break, eh? And you can just get your thumb out in a 2-inch line now with dirt caked on and inside. And it's not treated, boy. It's not treated.
Yeah, it's certainly not modern-day delivery of water. Dion, I'll see what information I can get for you.
I took pictures there yesterday of the spillway. It's 50-year-old spillway done out of wood now, Patty. You know what that looks like now today.
Why don't you send me the picture so I absolutely know what it looks like?
Yeah, and also, I'll send you the pictures now when we get off here.
Okay. Also,
our water supply is right alongside the road. We got a float out in the pond, Patty, for to keep the hose up at the mud by.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a 2025 solution for delivery of clean drinking water. Dion, I got to get to the news, but I appreciate the time. Send me those pics.
Okay, thanks, Patty.
Thanks, man. All the best. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, again, I take it for granted. I turn on the tap, there it is. Cold, clear, refreshing water that doesn't smell, ideal. But we're the lucky ones. I mean, just think about it. 2025, there are somewhere around 180 boil order advisories in play today. Or in place, I guess is the right way to put it. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to Connie Pike. She's with Miles for Smiles. Good morning, Connie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How's it going today? We got summer finally.
Summer is here. Absolutely. I'm doing okay, Connie. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Sorry I'm late calling this month. I just had some family issues going on. So I wanted to give you the numbers for June. And sadly, Patty, they're not going in the right direction, as I've often said. 367 cases for June month, cases involving crimes against children in our province in all 10 courts. 367 charges on the docket. And again, I'll give the caveat that about 10% of court cases are actually reported, and a very small fraction, probably 2 to 3%, actually go to court. So you're looking at just skimming the surface here with 367. There were 71 people charged with those offenses. Patty, if I could, I'd like to veer into another subject this morning, and with an international flavor. And I know people are divided on this issue, but again, Miles for Smiles is concerned because there are children involved, innocent children. And I want to talk about the war in Israel and Gaza. I read something the other day, and to be honest, I just haven't had time to check the veracity of it, but I did read another article that was extremely telling to me. But what I saw was Israel has received a shipment of weapons from the U.S. every 15 hours for the last 20 months. And last week they announced their 1,014th shipment, which was bulldozers. And I know that wasn't a weapon of war, but I think we can guess what those bulldozers are for. And I did hear a man call in on your show on Thursday morning there in your last half hour, and a very insightful call, and it was really what kind of precipitated me to speak about this morning, because I'm really, really concerned that the whole world is watching a genocide. Many children are just outright being murdered or starving to death. I read a very extensive article a couple of days ago, and IDF soldiers from the Israeli Defense Force, I should say, have privately told reporters that they've been told to deliberately fire at Palestinians near the aid distribution sites. And that should, the whole issue of what's going on there should be upsetting people. But, I mean, to have this deliberate takeout of people who are looking to feed themselves and their families, it's really horrendous. Journalists report that since June 1st, so in the past 6 weeks, about 600 people and over 4,000 have been wounded, and that they say that's a conservative number at or near these aid distribution sites. There have been over 20 shooting incidents. One of these soldiers actually told the reporter that it's a killing field and our form of communication is gunfire. Their activities in this area are referred to as Operation Salted Fish. And that particular phrase is the Israeli version of the children's game, red light, green light. I find this most disturbing. I find several things disturbing, all of it actually. But we are sending money to Israel, not just the States, but Canada too. We're sending money to Israel and providing them with weapons. This is a country that provides a very robust universal health care, education system, welfare programs to their citizens. They offer unemployment benefits, housing subsidies, financial assistance for families in need. Seniors get bonuses and are looked after. There's grants and fundings for entrepreneurs, especially those in the tech industry. Why are we sending Israel money and weapons? I just don't get it. What's going on has been normalized, but, you know, in a large part by the international community. I know there are groups and agencies that are in this battle every day trying to right the wrongs, but this war is ethically wrong, morally wrong. I know Israel was attacked, but now that's given them an excuse, in my mind, to obliterate the Palestinians using, you know, we're getting at Hamas. And even a month ago, they were saying these incidents of people being accidentally fired upon were unfortunate incidents. They're not even using that language anymore. I just don't get it, Patty. I don't get it.
A couple of things.
More of an outcry.
So the world has turned a blind eye. So we're told, and you mentioned one word, veracity. That's one thing I do struggle with here, is just how much merit is associated with some of the stories that we hear. I'll put that out there. And that's for most conflict zones in this world. The world of propaganda and disinformation is rampant, so it does make it very difficult for those who would like to follow along, to understand what's going on, to know what they're looking at, whether or not it's real or not. I'll put that disclaimer out there because I think that's a big part of how difficult it is to have these conversations. Regardless, the horrors of war are real, no matter how anybody wants to slice this. Apparently, there's some 20% of the Gaza Strip that's still inhabitable. So the population is now living in 20% of what it once lived in, insofar as just footprint. You don't have to take it from me. You can take it from all the aid agencies out there. At certain points of this conflict, this war, food and aid has been used as a weapon of war. I mean, that's an international war crime. The whole world agrees with that. Everybody, all the developed nations in the world have signed on to agree that that is absolutely unacceptable, reprehensible behavior. So it doesn't matter what you think or who you support or the rationale for one set of some support or opposition. Those things are happening. And again, I'm very careful to accept every single article or every single picture I see as being legit and real. Like, for instance, so someone sent me a picture to describe some of the destruction, but it turns out that that was a picture from Herzegovina. So again, it's easy enough to be drawn in. It's very difficult to discern what you're looking at or what you're hearing. And I'm not saying that about you, Connie, and what you're thinking and feeling, but I think that's been a real nature of some of the coverage of these conflicts in the recent past.
Oh, I agree, Patty, and I think the onus is on all of us to, you know, really check these stories out. There are a number of ways that people can do that to check the truth, or, you know, if it's just myth or if it's something erroneous on the internet. Like, we all know that happens, and we all know it's more likely to happen now, especially with AI. Like, there are so many concerns about the truthfulness of what's being told. But I just want to say that the article that I read was quite extensive, and it was written by 3 independent reporters. So, you know, I did feel that a lot of the information in there where the IDF soldiers are basically talking about this behind the scenes. I mean, it's like anything else. People say things privately, or when they figure they have anonymity, you know, they'll say things that they wouldn't say publicly. And it just struck me that this article was really telling about what's actually going on over there and the orders that these soldiers are being given.
Connie, I appreciate the time. I have to get to the break, but anything else quickly before we say goodbye?
No, I don't want to have our own issues in this province minimized in any way or get lost in the fray. And we're still very concerned, Patty. It's going to be 2 years next month since I started calling you about the court numbers. And, they remain the same. They've been the same average, pretty much 330, 340 cases every month for the past 2 years. So that tells me that there's something we're not doing right.
Yeah, and whether it be a matter of people knowing better and just being better human beings and better caregivers or parents is just extraordinary. It's very heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. Connie, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Patty, as usual.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Ray's in the queue to talk about the Lower Churchill. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Ray. You're on the air.
Yes, and pleasant good day to you, sir.
Same to you, sir.
We just had a 7% raise in our hydro, as we all know. Last year, everybody was wondering why our hydro bills were the highest ever, and we were told it was due to lower temperatures and wind and whatnot, which is a bunch of BS, because I went back over my books, and we had the same usage of hydro back years ago as we had that month for the same year this year. So here we got a 7% raise now in the summertime. In the following year, we get hit with another 7 or 10%. We got a lot of people walking through malls to try to keep warm and going hungry to pay this massive debt that we owe to Churchill Falls. I didn't get a chance to proofread what I've got written down, so if I repeat myself, please acknowledge that. We want to know how much we paid on the massive debt for Lower Churchill Falls, monthly or yearly. How many generations are going to have to pay for this beautiful, wonderful project that happened in Lower Churchill? Or does it ever come to an end? How come ratepayers in Quebec and parts of the USA are getting cheaper rates than us people who are providing them with this commodity?
Okay, so a couple of things. If we're talking about Muskrat Falls, then fair enough. And the obligation here at this moment in time, unless it's refinanced or renegotiated, is 50 years. So there's a couple of generations that are on the hook for it, if not more. So that's that one. The issue regarding the price of power here, we're compared to Quebec, which is on the average 8 cents kilowatt hour. What are we, 14.25 if we're talking about residential rates? So we went into these negotiations having created our own issues. So when people try to conflate currently what we pay versus what Quebec pays, how do we factor that into conversation regarding the Upper Churchill, in your mind, right?
I would have to sit down for a certain amount of time and do an exploratory on it before I could come up with any kind of an educated answer to the question that you are asking me. How much are we paying the politicians to rob us on this deal? Like, here we go, it went from $7 billion to $15 billion overnight. And who was looking after the books? It's fine for those people who have families to have such an enormous paycheck or underhandedly use our money. And when do we see at the end of any year how much we have paid on the debt? When Quebec made this deal with Newfoundland a couple of months ago or whatever time it was, how much of that money was put in to that to bring down that debt? There are so many questions. There should be one person, and his portfolio should be to see exactly what is happening with this enormous debt that 500,000 people here and less than that because there's lots of people living in one house, for example, that are trying to pay off this enormous amount of money that got so out of hand that none of us could say where the money went or how it's going to be spent. But they just keep taking money from our bank accounts.
So when you're talking about debt, are you talking about like the province's net debt, or are you talking about the Muskrat debt, or what specifically?
I am talking about one debt only. I'm talking about the Lower Churchill Falls. And if you want to go further, take a look at whatever money is coming into Newfoundland, how it's being spent. Where is the accountability on any of it? Years ago, we had politicians that were there to serve the people. Now it seems like politicians are there to rob the people. This is all I can see. I don't see past that. And maybe it's my negative mind, but somehow I continue to feel that we, 500,000 people on this island, are being ripped off in every direction.
It's a popular thought. I can tell you that much, Ray.
I thank you very much for your time, sir.
I appreciate your call.
And I hope that somebody is going to follow up on this Churchill deal and see what kind of breaks we can get on it, because we're paying way, way too much. I thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you, Ray. Enjoy the rest of your day.
May you have a nice day, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, and we had an inquiry on it, and what became of it? Not a lot. I mean, we were told if there were civil matters to be pursued, that would happen. If there was criminal investigations to be taken, that would happen. Haven't heard one peep since. Let's see here. Let's go to line number 5. Bram, you're on the air.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Bram also calling.
Welcome to the show, Bram.
Good. Thank you very much. I just make a quick comment here about the recycling.
Okay.
I called a recycling place today to go up with 4 bags. Let's say about $15 worth of stuff.
Okay.
And the place has been shut down since 2 weeks ago, and they're waiting for a part to come from Nova Scotia to Nova Recycling, and they got trucks going back and forth every day picking up recyclables. And not only that, people in Cornbrook and surrounding area, would say from here to Pasadena, Lark Harbor, North Shore, South Shore, they come for to bring recyclables in. They drive in, find out that the door is closed. So now they got to lug this stuff back. So the government wants us to recycle, and there should be more places in Cornbrook and surrounding areas to take recyclables, even if it's just a shed or a warehouse or something, no?
So, Bram, were you talking about the Green Depot is not accepting?
Well, yeah, because, it's called Nova Recycling here in Cornbrook. It's a huge warehouse.
Okay.
And the girl, I called this morning, and I called yesterday, and I called Friday, and I called Saturday. Well, she said, we're still shut down, waiting for a part, and they're counting hand, and they got state-of-the-art machines that count the recycling. Right within 5 minutes, you can have $30 for recyclables counted. Now, you're talking quite a while, and this morning she said there was 4 people coming from out of town, piled up by the door at 7:30, waiting for her to get in, right? And she said we had to take them in and put a sign out and say we can't do anything today. And the 4 people up there, they're drove, and he gets all the irate people that's coming in with the stuff, right? And you can understand, right? But at the end of the day, it's just, I don't know, it's ludicrous. They want us to recycle. They want everybody to clean Newfoundland. But how can you do it when there's nowhere to put the stuff?
Fair question. So Cornbrook does curbside recycling as well, right?
Yes.
So
right.
What's becoming of the curbside stuff?
Well, they put it in their trucks, and they drive to the depot at the Nova Recycling back in and just dump one side out and leave it on the ground. So they go to the cardboard, cans, glass, you name it. They got to go through it. So it's just, they need somebody from somewhere to go and just look at it and take note and say, boys, we got to do something better than this. Never mind Churchill. That's another kettle of fish, right?
That it is. So how long has the depot been not accepting from residents?
off and on since last week, 2 weeks. It's today.
And
Right,
any
so-
timeline associated with the final repairs, the part delivered and repairs done?
You know, that's the way the government goes in one slot and comes out the other. We don't know. They don't know. They're just. I mean, I talked to a guy this morning from Nova Scotia. He wanted me to pick up 30 boxes of recycling of wine bottles. I said, "Boy," I said, "you just can't do it." Because I said, you know that Canada ends the last point east of Nova Scotia. So I said, us guys over here. I said, I understand you. You know, I understand this. It's true. I mean, to get a part, come over on a Nova Scotia truck for Nova Recycling. It's ridiculous, you know.
I mean, we certainly don't recycle like the rest of Canada. I mean, no glass. I mean, it's just the last year or so we recycle a tire. We were paying someone to take our tires as opposed to actually recycle them. They could be repurposed for all kinds of stuff. But no, we were until last year, I think it was, when the tire recycling came to town. And that's only in one part of the province.
Well, and there's a guy, too. He takes bottles of all sizes. I saw in the news there a while back that he just crushes the bottles and turns them into sand. I mean, that's amazing, you know. I mean, the ingenuity, the fortitude of someone say, "Oh, instead of breaking it in the grass, let's recycle it," you know. And it's amazing. I think it was around your way somewhere. I saw it.
Yeah, we had that guy on the show, didn't we, Dave? I think we had him on to talk about what he's doing out there.
Well, that's why I heard it. And then I saw it on the news reports on evening news, right?
Very well. Yeah, it's called Newfound Sand.
Yeah, so there's lots of newfound sand in Newfoundland.
Yeah, and there's lots of newfound sand on the bottom of the bays and in the woods and everywhere else that people flick it. Anything else you want to offer here this morning, Brad? We'll get a follow-up with Scotia Recycling.
Yeah, you're doing a fine job. And I told the girl this morning, she was pulling her hair out. I said, "Excuse me for a second. Can I give you some advice?" She said, "Great. Just give it to me." I said, "No, when you get your paycheck, there's a number on the corner." And I said, "That's all you are. A number on a paycheck." So I said, "Don't take the world on your shoulders."
It's good advice. I could use some of it. Bram, appreciate the time, the concern. We'll zip off for now and see if we can't get a timeline update.
Listen, if I don't see you again, happy birthday, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.
Same to you, Bram. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye. Let's take a break. When we come back, the Mayor of Dover is Tony Keats. He's in the queue to talk wildfires, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Well, the Mayor of Dover is Tony Keats, and he joins us on line number 6. Mayor Keats, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Not too bad, sir. I think that phone line is no good. We'll have to put you on hold. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the PC member for Topsail. He's the opposition critic for Education, Children and Youth Services. That's Paul Dinn. Paul, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How are you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not bad. I was, as you know, I had a town hall there a couple of weeks back on education and childcare. I did one previous year as well. And listening to your preamble today and talking about childcare and talking about speech-language pathologists, actually, I want to just give some information on what I heard from the gathering I had at the town hall, because I had ECEs, I had early child operators, I had speech-language pathologists, parents, and so on. And it was quite an interesting discussion. Went on for well over the 2 hours I had allocated, so there was lots of issues discussed. But when I look at what's been heard and what we heard last year at the same time, there's a lot of issues that are still outstanding, and with regards to childcare operators, and that communication has been, and it still is, a huge issue when dealing with the department, either for questions or concerns or trying to set up or establish a childcare center. And I've heard from many since the town hall who have reached out, and we have a lot of centers out there who have jumped through every hoop that's been asked of them, followed the timelines that have been asked for them, but have not been able to get approval or on the operating grant program, which I think is atrocious given the need we have for childcare here. And you also mentioned, I think in your preamble too, or you mentioned had an email from an operator who says, don't take it out on them because they're the ones trying to get through this. And I've heard similar stories. I've heard similar stories from childcare operators who operated throughout the school year and now trying to get programming in place for the summer months have been told, well, sorry, we don't have enough money in the budget for the operating grant program, so you're going to have to charge them more. And of course, you get parents get irate over that, and so they should, but probably with the wrong people. It should be directed at government in this respect. And we still see some for early child educators trying to make it professional, make it a career. Still hearing that there's no movement on the pension plan. They have no long-term security. They still have issues around sick days. There's so many issues that they're dealing with that have not been addressed, and they're waiting and waiting. And in order to get any answers, excuse me, they have to send in a message to an email, a generic email address. Like getting on the phone and talking to an actual individual seems to be hard to do or non-existent, and that's not the way to operate when you deal with this. And the other issue that child care operators have brought out is they feel the red tape they have to go through to get approved, and if they say anything wrong, they're going to be reviewed or assessed. It's just a terrible, terrible relationship that's been established when it comes to child care in this province.
We had a couple of calls from a couple of proponents, applicants to set up daycare spaces. And on top of, red tape or bureaucracy, of course, government has to do its required due diligence because we are talking about the care of children. But in those two circumstances, it's not that they were really complaining about the red tape, is they were complaining about the silence. Is they did everything. And in one circumstance, it was someone who had set up a childcare in the city, was trying to set up another one, I think it was in Paradise. So going through the same application process, understanding what he or she needs to put it forward, and nothing, just silence. Silence is not good enough.
No, and that's exactly what they're hearing. Well, that's what they're not hearing, is a response back. And, they've sent me the information that they've sent in, and yes, they've met all that's been asked of them, but they're in a holding pattern. And to hear the minister speak the other day and talk about 20-odd projects that hopefully they'll announce in the near future. But I know we'll call it projects that just haven't been approved and won't be approved. They've had meetings with the people in government in there and haven't gotten approval and won't get approval. And, that's terrible because there's so many parents who are still looking for childcare. There's still so many childcare deserts in the province. I've had ABCs and ECE Newfoundland. They've been in. We had a grand discussion there last week. Very eye-opening for me in terms of some of the things that are not being done. I had a couple of speech pathologists who have been reached out to me as well. And that's an interesting thing with speech pathologists. And having them all in one room there a couple of weeks back, child care operators are saying, yes, it's fine to offer 5 new positions in the K-12 system, but these people, these professionals are needed at the toddler age. They're needed before these children actually get into the K-12 system. And as you noted today, the scope of practice for language pathologists is pretty broad and deals with a lot of different issues. And, those need to be addressed before a child gets into to K-12. And, one of them told me, they said the wait list just to get diagnosed is upwards to 13 months. And, after that, if it's covered by, if it's private and it's covered by insurance and you're looking at 2 or 3 sessions, that's not doing it. That's not doing it for a child who needs this. So I know gone off topic here, but there were so many things brought up at this open house that I had. But at the end of the day, you want to be setting up our children for success and not failure. And we should be doing all we can. If there's people out there who are willing to operate and open up a child care center and are dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, then government needs to work with them because we need them. And the sound of silence is not doing it. It's not doing it for them. And at the end of the day, the parents are most frustrated, and we have children who have nowhere to go, and we have parents who, in some instances, have to cut back on their work or give up their work altogether, and that's not acceptable.
If we talk about toddlers needing assessment and then consequently likely the need to get some therapy, look, We know what goes on in the school system. If you fall behind early, playing catch up is extremely difficult, especially when you're still trying to overcome a speech language pathologist related concern. So this is bigger than people realize. And I specifically mentioned scope of practice this morning because I'll freely admit I wasn't fully aware of their entire scope of practice, but now I am. And so it makes it even a bigger deal. We're not just talking about what people might traditionally think goes on in one of those pathologists' office. If I'm a little kid in school and I can't follow a direction like put your crayons there, how do you think I'm going to advance academically? What do you think I'm going to learn that year? Probably nothing.
No, and that's right. They got to be set up before they get there. And one of the speech language pathologists offered me a job description, and when I read down to the list, it talks about speech, sound production, resonance, voice, fluency, pre-linguistic communication, language comprehension, expression. It goes on and on and on. What they do for children, and one pointed out, with the rise in children with exceptionalities, and they used autism as an example. There's a greater need for this, and you cannot cut education, break it into pieces. It's cradle to grave, really. And when you have young children, toddler age, who need help and cannot get it, or are waiting 13 to 18 months to get interventions, that's not acceptable. And you're just setting them up to fail.
Yeah, unfortunately so. I appreciate the time this morning, Paul. Thanks for doing it. I have the entirety of the list of concerns that you shared about your town hall. I'll have a read through it later when I get a chance.
Yeah, no, some interesting stuff there, and I know it's pretty raw, but I just took it verbatim, basically from what they were saying. But it's very much on track with what you said this morning and what we're hearing from the different advocacy groups and the different operators out there. So hopefully government's listening, and hopefully government will start acting on this, because it's needed, and we need to see some more transparency and see where we're going and where we've been and how we get to the targets that have been set.
Appreciate the time.
You have a great day.
Thanks, Paul. You too. Bye-bye. Paul Din, member for Topsail. Let's take a final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Mayor of Dover, Tony Keats. Mayor Keats, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
I'm good. Paddy, I would be remiss if I didn't call in today to send out several bouquets of thanks and gratitude, Paddy, to the many responders, the first responders who showed up in our community this past Saturday to a wildfire that we were experiencing in our community, Paddy. You can't say enough about their professionalism. The men and women that showed up within our community that day. The Air Bay Dover Fire Brigade, the Centre of our Wareham Trinity Fire Department, and the Gamble Fire Department. They also had the New West Valley Fire Department on standby. The RCMP from Glovertown and New West Valley were here from the 2 detachments. The Department of Forestry from Gamble, the Newfoundland Ambulance Services was on standby here in the community just in case we needed them. And the 2 water bombers and their staff, and the helicopter that showed up out of Gander. And Paddy, the quick response is unbelievable. And our residents, Paddy, for the cooperation and staying back from the fire area and the residents in that area who were evacuated at the time. It's unbelievable, the response that we've seen and how quick the response came to our community that day, Paddy.
And good on them. I mean, they perform such a critically important role. We don't necessarily understand it or acknowledge it until we need them.
Exactly. And that's the sentiment that we've been sharing ever since Saturday. You don't know what's there until you need them. Sometimes we take that part of it for granted. We see other big fires in other big communities, and we feel bad and we feel sorry for them, and our hearts and our prayers are with them all the time. But when it hits home, it's we know how it feels.
Absolutely. And just one more reminder, folks. So the province-wide fire ban is back in place. And I can't speak for every part of the province, obviously, but it is bone dry around here. Absolutely bone dry. So,
and Paddy, a lot of people say, well, we had a bit of rain last night, or we had a bit of rain today. But that rain don't mean nothing to the undergrowth of those trees. And that's where it's really, really dry at.
Well, I mean, you can have a good downpour, but if it's as dry as it is around here, that water gets sucked into the ground before you know it, and it absolutely does very little for the actual brown grass that's sitting above the dirt. So I know there's different ways that some of these fires start, but when we see it as bad or as dry as it is, I should say, and as hot as it is, everyone just do your best to not be irresponsible or just oblivious, and something that you can't control leads into a fire that gets out of control. So let's hope. And I mean, I'm not going to speak to some of the particulars, say, for instance, around Chance Harbour, but also in the world of commercial operations, industrial operations, they've got to be very mindful here too, because there's some finger pointing of blame going around here.
Yeah, I know. I heard yesterday on one of the programs, one of the force technicians called in, and they were talking about, how important it is to even, your ATV use within bog areas, your force equipment, making sure everything is maintained, and because there's only a spark or it's only the exhaust that comes from them can start a fire, especially when it's so dry.
No question. It could be anything from lightning to an ATV muffler to a variety of potential fire starters. Tony, Mayor Keats, I'm sure the first responders appreciate your appreciation here this morning. Anything else before I take one last call?
Yeah, no, Patty, before I go, I do have to thank our town staff, for being on the spot that day and helping put up those the barriers to make sure that traffic didn't get into that area, making sure we had water to the first responders. It's unbelievable, but everything comes together when it's needed. So once again, Patty, thanks to those first responders. We are in debt to them, and we applaud them.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, Mayor.
No problem. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Tony Keats, the Mayor of Dover. Final word this morning goes to line number 3. Liam, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you this morning?
Great today. Thanks. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Trying to stay cool up here in Toronto. She's a hot one.
Yeah, it's hot. And what's the air quality like? Because I see it's really bad when we talk about the cities on the planet with the worst air quality. Toronto's on the list?
Yeah, but you know what? She's pretty moggy and a lot of smoke as well. But you can't smell the smoke. But like yesterday, you could see. I was like, "Am I seeing the heat?" And it's the smog. So it's not the best. Certainly not. And what about for you folks?
Not too bad around here. The sky's been pretty clear for the most part. But air quality in Toronto, I have family there, so I try to check those things every now and then. Before we run out of time, Liam, I know that's not what you called about.
I know. So I was listening to the program, and I was flabbergasted to hear that there's, places in Newfoundland that don't have running water or access to that. Like that, it's flabbergasted. And then I think, well, how many places in Canada don't have that? And it's concerning because I'm like, we're a first world country. Is it terrain? Is it geopolitical? Is it money? I guess like you said, you don't realize how good you got it. At times. And I'm going to Brazil with my girlfriend because that's where she's from now in end of August. She's going to be like, Liam, you're going to get quite a culture shock.
Yeah, I mean, there's examples of this right across the country. And in the call that you're referring to, I mean, it's a small, remote community with really aging infrastructure that they're just chasing their tail. So you can fix one joint and then another's going to bust eventually or inevitably down the line. So certainly, when you talk about a province with 180-ish boil order advisories in place in 2025, I don't understand it. Liam, before we run out of time, any final quick thoughts?
No, I mean that's it. That's it, really. That's all my thoughts that I had. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, Dave. Thanks again, and we'll be chatting to you soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, Liam. Take good care.
Yeah, you too. Okay.
Thank you. Alrighty.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.